Stop eating this vegetable after 60. It's destroying your gut health. You've probably heard for years that green peppers are a healthy choice, bright, crunchy, packed with vitamins. But here's a twist most people never see coming. After 60, that same healthy pepper can quietly work against you. Hidden inside those crunchy bites lies a compound that, according to medical studies on older adults, can inflame your gut, trigger bloating, and even stir up joint pain if eaten regularly after 60. For many older adults who eat well, but still feel uncomfortable after meals, the true culprit sitting on the plate isn't oil, sugar, or salt. It's that innocent green pepper. Now, before you feel like tossing every vegetable out of the fridge, take a breath. The fix is simple once you understand what's happening inside your body. After 60, digestion naturally slows, stomach acid and enzymes decline, and the friendly gut bacteria that used to break down tough plant fibers lose a bit of strength. That means certain foods your body handled easily years ago can suddenly become hard work. And green peppers, with their tough skins and hidden plant toxins, land squarely in that danger zone. Inside those glossy green skins lies a natural defense chemical called Solanine. It's part of a group of compounds that plants create to fight off insects and pests, but it's also rough on human digestion, especially in older adults. Medical research shows Solanine, documented in toxicology and digestive health studies, can disrupt cell membranes, interfere with your body's electrical balance, and inflame the gut lining, particularly in older adults with slower metabolism or reduced gut barrier integrity. In younger people with quick metabolisms, that irritation might pass unnoticed. But for adults over 60, who already have more delicate digestion, Solanine can trigger a chain of reactions that leave the gut inflamed and the joints aching. Here's the tricky part. Green peppers are part of the nightshade family, right alongside white potatoes and eggplants. They all contain small amounts of these alkaloid toxins. And while those levels aren't enough to kill you, repeated low-dose exposure can quietly stress your digestive system over time. Researchers have documented how solanine can damage the protective lining of intestinal cells, making them more porous. Think of it like worn fabric. What used to block irritants from entering the bloodstream now starts to leak, setting off inflammation that travels to the joints and other tissues. That's one reason some people can't figure out why their knees or wrists ache, even though they're eating healthy. And it's not just solanine. The thick, fibrous structure of green pepper skin adds another obstacle. That skin is high in cellulose, a plant fiber humans simply can't digest. Normally, your gut bacteria help break it down. But with age, the microbiome loses some of its efficiency. So instead of aiding digestion, cellulose-rich walls trap gas and cause cramping. The double hit of solanine plus cellulose makes green peppers, especially raw ones, a perfect storm for older digestive systems. Researchers have confirmed that cellulose fermentation declines after 60, while solanine absorption may be prolonged, producing the very bloating and cramping many seniors report. If you've noticed you feel bloated, gassy, or tired after a healthy stir-fry or salad, it might not be the oil or the onions, it could be that pepper. Many seniors think they're reacting to spices or dairy when in reality, their gut is reacting to alkaloids and tough fibers it can't handle anymore. And since these reactions can take hours to appear, they're easy to miss or blame on something else. But here's the good news. You don't have to swear off flavor or color. The problem isn't peppers in general. It's that green. Unripe ones have higher solanine levels. When a bell pepper ripens fully and turns red, orange, or yellow, that alkaloid content drops dramatically while its antioxidants and vitamins rise. That means you can still enjoy the same crunch and sweetness without punishing your gut. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how solanine and cellulose team up against your digestive comfort, and more importantly, what to do about it. We'll break down what happens in your gut after 60, show why green peppers cause so many hidden symptoms, and walk through simple swaps you can make today for better comfort, less inflammation, and more energy. Your meals will still look colorful and taste great, but your stomach will finally thank you instead of protesting. Section 1. Why digestion changes after 60. The first thing you need to know is this: your digestive system at 60 is not the same machine it was at 40. Even if you eat balanced meals, limit sugar, and stay active, there are invisible shifts happening inside your gut that change how your body handles food. Think of it as a slower, gentler engine that still runs beautifully but needs a bit more maintenance. And when certain foods push that engine too hard, problems like bloating, acid reflux, or stomach pressure start to appear much faster. One of the biggest changes is in stomach acid production. When you're younger, your stomach releases strong hydrochloric acid to break down proteins, extract minerals, and kill harmful bacteria. But with age, that acid naturally declines, sometimes by 50% or more. Low stomach acid means food lingers longer before it starts digesting, which can cause that heavy, full for hours feeling after normal meals. It also means your stomach struggles to fully break down tougher fibers or plant chemicals, including those stubborn alkaloids found in green peppers. At the same time, your gut motility, basically how well food moves through your intestines, starts to slow down. This isn't because you're doing anything wrong. It's simply how the body changes as our muscles and nerve signals age. The result? Digestion feels sluggish, gas builds up, and nutrients take longer to absorb. Add in less movement or certain medications, and your gut can feel like it's on pause more often than it should. Now, here's where the trouble compounds. Slower digestion and weaker acids create a perfect storm for incomplete food breakdown. Bits of high-fiber vegetables or complex plant toxins that would have passed easily when you were younger now stay in the gut longer, creating irritation and feeding the wrong kinds of bacteria. Studies on older adults show that when food lingers too long in the intestines, it promotes microbial imbalance, also known as dysbiosis, which leads to bloating, discomfort, and sometimes inflammatory reactions. Another key shift after 60 happens in enzyme production. Enzymes are your body's chemical scissors, the molecules that snip proteins, fats, and carbs into pieces small enough to absorb. The pancreas and intestines still make these enzymes as you age, but the total output starts to drop off. That means even simple foods like a salad with olive oil and mixed veggies can take more work to digest. Any food that's naturally tough, like raw green peppers, puts extra strain on that limited enzyme supply. Let's also talk about your gut microbiome, the colony of bacteria inside your intestines that does half the digestive work for you. When you're young, your microbiome is diverse and resilient. It breaks down fibers efficiently and produces short-chain fatty acids that keep your colon and immune system healthy. But after 60, that diversity begins to thin out. Some bacterial strains fade, while other, less helpful kinds increase. This loss means certain fibers, especially rough or insoluble ones like cellulose, don't ferment smoothly anymore. Instead of feeding the good bacteria, they sit and ferment unevenly, causing the bloating, flatulence, and rock in the stomach sensations so many older adults complain about. This reduction in microbial diversity doesn't just influence digestion, it also weakens your immune defense. More research now shows that 70 to 80% of immune activity happens inside the gut. A weaker, imbalanced microbiome makes it easier for inflammation to spread from the intestines to the joints, skin, or even the brain. So a sensitive gut isn't just a digestion issue, it's a whole body issue. Another thing that often gets overlooked is hydration and electrolyte balance. Seniors tend to drink less water because thirst cues decline with age, and medications like diuretics can pull fluid out of the system. Without adequate hydration, the intestines absorb less efficiently and stool moves slower. This causes dryness in the digestive tract, which intensifies the difficulty of processing fibrous vegetables. Raw green peppers with their thick cellulose walls can feel like sandpaper moving through an already dry tunnel. No wonder so many older adults notice cramping or indigestion after eating them in salads. To make matters a little trickier, medications and supplements add their own influence. Many common prescriptions, antacids, blood pressure meds, pain relievers, alter stomach acid levels or slow intestinal contractions. So even if you think you're eating right, those pills may quietly be making digestion weaker, laying the groundwork for intolerance to certain foods. When something as dense and fibrous as a green pepper comes along, it tips the balance from manageable to uncomfortable. Age also changes the structural side of digestion. The intestinal lining, those thin, delicate walls responsible for absorbing nutrients, gradually loses some of its protective thickness and elasticity. Years of natural wear, combined with slower cell repair, mean it becomes easier for irritants to cross that barrier. This is what experts refer to as increased intestinal permeability, or more simply, leaky gut. In this state, small toxins or plant compounds that should stay trapped in the digestive tract can seep into circulation, triggering immune responses and inflammation. The irony? You could be eating an innocent-looking vegetable, and yet it quietly irritates your body from the inside out. All these changes, lower acid, slower motility, fewer enzymes, weaker microbiome, thinner gut lining, combine into one big truth. Certain foods that once nourished effortlessly may now backfire. Green peppers, unfortunately, hit nearly every weak spot. They're high in cellulose that resists digestion. They carry solanine that irritates the gut lining, and they stay in the intestines longer because of reduced acid and enzymes. For adults over 60, that combination can make a simple stir-fry feel like a brick in the stomach. So if you've ever noticed meals sitting heavier than they used to, or you feel gassy after vegetables you once loved, it's not your imagination. In fact, controlled studies on elderly digestion confirm that reduced acid and enzyme production directly slow the breakdown of fibers like those in green peppers, meaning the discomfort has a physiological cause, not personal weakness. It's physiology. Your body is just less tolerant of foods that need strong acid and fast processing to feel comfortable afterward. Recognizing that isn't about giving up, it's about adjusting with awareness. The upside is that once you understand why these changes occur, you can work with them instead of against them. Older adults who shift toward gentler vegetables, eat smaller portions more frequently, and emphasize hydration often experience noticeable relief within a week. A balanced diet still matters. It just needs to reflect the new reality of a slower, more sensitive digestive rhythm. And here's the important bridge to our next part. Once you see how digestion evolves with age, the surprising damage from certain vegetables starts to make sense. Because when the body's protective barriers thin out and digestion slows down, compounds that barely bothered you before can suddenly become toxic allies. And that's exactly where green peppers sneak in under the radar. Section 2. The hidden toxin in green peppers, solanine. Here's the surprising truth most people never hear. Inside every crisp, green bell pepper lives a chemical your body treats like a mild poison. It's called solanine, and it's part of the pepper's built-in defense system. All plants have ways to fight off pests and infections, but the trouble starts when that protective chemical ends up confusing your digestive system instead of helping it. Solanine belongs to a family of natural compounds called glycoalkaloids, and you'll find it throughout the entire nightshade group, potatoes, eggplants, and both green and unripe peppers. In nature, solanine works brilliantly because it stops insects and molds from attacking the plant. But in humans, especially older adults, it's a subtle irritant. You don't need a huge amount of it to feel the effects, only enough to start quietly undermining your gut comfort. What researchers have found is that solanine is not evenly distributed in these foods. It's highest in green or unripe peppers, while brightly colored ripe peppers, red, orange, and yellow, contain far less. That's because as the pepper ripens, it breaks down these alkaloid defenses and replaces them with antioxidant pigments like beta-carotene and vitamin C. When you bite into a raw green pepper, you're getting crisp texture, but also the most concentrated dose of solanine that plant will ever have. Now, what exactly does this compound do once it's inside your body? Studies show that solanine can disrupt cell membranes, and the damage often begins in the digestive tract. Think of the inner lining of your intestines as a wall made of tightly packed bricks. Those bricks are the cells that absorb nutrients while blocking toxins. Solanine slips into the spacing between them, loosens the bonds, and weakens the wall. Over time, that increases what doctors call intestinal permeability or leaky gut. It's the difference between a closed window and one that's just slightly open. You start letting things through that were never meant to cross. Medical sources also describe solanine's effect on mitochondria, the little energy factories inside every cell. By altering the balance of potassium and calcium within those mitochondria, solanine can trigger stress responses that cause inflammation and even program cell death. Essentially, it tires cells out before they can repair themselves. This is part of why people with already slower recovery, like many over 60, may feel systemic fatigue after eating nightshades frequently. The body spends more energy repairing microscopic irritation than it does nourishing tissue. Another key discovery involves red blood cells and nerve enzymes. In laboratory studies, solanine has been shown to weaken red blood cell membranes and inhibit an enzyme called cholinesterase, which nerves use to communicate properly. That's one reason symptoms of exposure can include fogginess, cramps, or that slightly dizzy, off-balance feeling a few hours after a meal heavy in potatoes or green peppers. None of this means you're in danger from a single serving, but for someone whose liver and kidneys already work at a slower pace, the clearing process takes longer, and that irritation can accumulate subtly day after day. So how much is too much? Toxicologists set rough limits, mainly for safety in the potato industry, because potatoes are where solanine poisoning has been reported most. But the logic applies across the board. At doses as low as 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight, measurable physiological changes can occur. You'd need to eat quite a lot of perfectly green produce to reach acute danger, but chronic low-level exposure is what worries specialists most for older adults. When digestion slows and detox pathways weaken, even normal levels may linger longer in the bloodstream, quietly pushing the immune system toward inflammation. Now, I know that might sound abstract, so let's ground it in what you'd actually feel. When solanine irritates the gut lining, you might notice a burning sensation or mild nausea soon after eating, a dull ache in the upper belly, or a feeling like food just isn't going anywhere. That's the membrane disruption playing out. Over time, the inflammation can spark bloating, alternating constipation, and loose stools, or that uncomfortable tightness across the lower abdomen. Because the nerve enzyme cholinesterase gets affected, you can also experience strange symptoms that don't seem digestive: restlessness, stiffness, headaches, or light joint swelling the next morning. These crossbody effects are part of what makes solanine intolerance so confusing for physicians to identify. For older adults, there are a few specific risk factors that magnify solanine's punch. Lower stomach acid means the compound isn't neutralized as efficiently before reaching the intestines. Slower gut transit allows it to stay in contact with the intestinal walls longer, and reduced liver and kidney filtration can delay its removal once it's absorbed into the bloodstream. Put that together, and you can see why two people might eat the same salad, but only the senior ends up feeling bloated and achy afterward. One of the biggest clues your body gives is bitterness. If you've ever bitten into a green pepper that tasted unusually bitter or sharp, that's nature's warning sign. The plant has elevated glycoalkaloid content. In ancient times, that bitter taste would tell humans to spit it out. Modern palates are so used to variety that we override that signal and keep eating. But remember, bitterness equals higher solanine. It's also worth noting that cooking helps, but only partly. Solanine begins breaking down around 340 degrees Fahrenheit, 170 degrees Celsius, yet typical sautéing or baking rarely destroys it completely. So while roasting green peppers may reduce irritation a bit compared with eating them raw, the compound isn't entirely gone. Plus, the cellulose walls of the pepper remain intact unless fully softened, meaning your digestive tract still faces extra mechanical work. That's why even a roasted stuffed pepper can leave some people feeling uneasily full long after dinner. Documented case reviews in medical journals reveal that solanine poisoning, though rare, most often occurs when people eat green, sprouted, or damaged potatoes. The exact same chemical pattern exists in unripe peppers. It's just that most people don't eat them in huge quantities at once. For an elderly digestive system, however, small, steady exposure matters more than a single large one. Researchers have even found that alpha-solanine can accumulate in tissues over repeated meals if the metabolism of liver enzymes slows down, which is common after 60. To put it simply, solanine pokes tiny holes in cellular walls, steals energy from mitochondria, and nudges your immune system toward irritation. The result is a digestive landscape that stays mildly inflamed. You might not call it food poisoning, but it's enough to dull nutrient absorption, deplete energy, and make joints flare up a bit faster when inflammation spreads through the bloodstream. Those are signals to listen to rather than ignore. You may wonder, if this toxin exists naturally, why don't health agencies warn about eating green peppers? That's a fair question. The truth is, standard safety limits assume a healthy adult digestive system that can process and excrete alkaloids efficiently. Those guidelines rarely account for older physiology, lower acid, thinner gut lining, multiple medications, all of which can heighten sensitivity. So while a 30-year-old can polish off a fajita loaded with green peppers and feel fine, someone over 60 might wake up with stiffness or stomach churn without realizing the connection. Here's what the practical takeaway looks like. Simple, doctor-approved steps that make daily life easier rather than restrictive. If you enjoy peppers, aim for fully ripe varieties, the red, orange, or yellow ones. They have significantly lower solanine levels, typically below detection in laboratory tests, while packing far more antioxidants like vitamin C and beta-carotene that actually calm inflammation instead of fueling it. Think of it as flipping a switch from a plant that defends itself from bugs to a plant that nourishes you. You might also reduce exposure by practicing what food safety experts recommend for potatoes. Avoid any green-tinged or bitter pieces, store produce in cool, dark places, and don't try to salvage parts that look off. Those visual cues correspond directly with higher toxin production. A senior who trims out a few green spots before cooking is doing more for gut health than most realize. So yes, solanine is natural, but so is arsenic. It's a matter of dose and resilience. When your digestion runs slower and your cells repair at a gentler pace, that resilience declines. Keeping solanine intake low becomes a smart, protective habit rather than a strict rule. And it starts by recognizing which version of a familiar food lands hardest on your body. Understanding solanine's behavior explains why that simple green pepper can cause so much confusion in older digestion. Its chemical defense, once meant to save the plant, winds up challenging your already delicate gut barrier. And when you combine that with the thick cellulose walls we'll talk about next, you get a 1-2 punch that leaves the stomach overworked and inflamed. So let's look deeper at what actually happens inside your intestines once this toxin gets to work.